On this episode of After Wine School, Keith sits down with Daniel Brennan, Philly native, former student, and now the winemaker behind Decibel Wines in New Zealand's Hawke's Bay. From cheesesteaks in Hastings to pioneering organic vineyards and pushing Malbec into Kiwi consciousness, Danny's journey is anything but ordinary. The two dive deep into terroir, winemaking culture, and the grind of selling indie wines in America, with a healthy dose of Philly sarcasm, orca sightings, and tales of global wine hustle.
All right. Hey, folks. Welcome. This is Keith from the After Wine School podcast. Today, I am very lucky that I have Daniel Brennan of Decibel Wines, who actually is an old friend, old student, an old Philly native who now is this famous winemaker in New Zealand, man. So, hey.
Infamous, maybe.
Infamous.
Maybe not.
So I'm going to call you Danny, because that's how I know you, man.
Yeah, good. Do it.
All right, so. Mr.
We
Brennan.
actually do at our tasting room in Hastings, which is right in the heart of Hawke's Bay. We do a few times a year, we do a pop-up cheesesteak thing, and it's called Danny's. So you definitely can call me Danny. People in New Zealand joke around and call me Danny sometimes, because they know that's what people in Philly would call me.
Oh, of course. That's awesome. That is awesome. Now, I assume first off, let's just backtrack, because you may actually we may have some Philly issue problems here. Now, how are you making cheesesteaks in New Zealand? And mind you, right outside of Gimli Gravels. I'm sorry that you're in like the fancy part of the country.
I have a friend who is a very accomplished chef, like worked for Peter Gordon, and like he's like worked for some of the best, kitchens in New Zealand and wineries and stuff. But he's kind of gone out on his own. He's got 4 kids. He don't want to be working nights, all that. And he's a pastry chef originally by trade.
Oh, okay.
So he can bake bread like amazing.
All right.
And he bakes the bread, but it took him 4 tries. Like I was like, nah, you still don't have it. I was like sending him Instagram videos and cause I can't get him a sample down in New Zealand. So I'm like, nah, this is too sweet. Nah, this is too soft. Nah, this is too hard. And then he finally nailed it.
Are we still talking about bread?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I have questions. That's on this podcast. All right. So, but what about the whiz or the American cheese? Like, what kind of cheese are we doing here?
We get some sharp provolone or provolone picante.
All right.
And put a little bit of that, mix that in, because I do roast pork sandwich and hoagies too.
Okay.
So just 3 sandwiches.
Okay.
But we have a cheese there that's kind of a softer, stringier, mild cheese called Edam that is perfect for cheesesteaks.
All right. Okay.
And I cheat a bit too, because my buddy owns this place called the Organic Butcher, which is like a high-end butcher shop, and he gets me like really thin shaved rump for the cheesesteaks.
All right.
And so it's pretty next level. It's good.
Yeah.
I don't make any money on this thing.
No, that sounds very expensive. And also, I was just assuming you're importing kangaroo from Australia.
No.
I mean,
that's a good idea. We don't like much Aussie stuff in New Zealand anyway. So it's a bit of a chip on our shoulder. It's a bit of like the Canada-US thing. You know what I mean?
Oh well,
New Zealand is actually better than Australia.
Well, but the hard thing is that you are so much smaller.
Exactly.
And you also, I don't think you drink as much.
Trust me, it's close. It's definitely more per capita than here. But you're right in that they do own all our grocery stores and banks and things like that. So they kind of got us by the balls.
Oh, actually,
No, we don't think they're smart enough to have those kind of conspiracies worked out.
This is fantastic. I do love the fact that we are just going to shit on Australians for the next hour. That is fantastic. Because, fortunately, we don't really have much of a listenership there. So, we can do anything.
I'll help bump that up for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We'll create some hype. Any press is good press. Did you hear they were talking shit about us, mate? Because the accent's like Kiwis are kind of, it's like down here. But the Australians are right up here.
Well, I can't believe you actually pulled that off, because I will never try that accent. But
I live it my kids have Kiwi accents.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
but they also speak Italian, because their mother's Italian. So they'll go, Mama, they'll say something in Italian and then switch back to a Kiwi accent.
Oh, speak Italian with a Kiwi accent?
My 9-year-old kind of does. According to my wife, I barely
awesome.
know what they're saying half the time.
Well, that's actually fantastic. That is actually fascinating. Did you meet your wife in?
Yeah, we met down in. I used to throw a party every year with all the winemakers in May called Kiwis Giving, which is kind of like a post-harvest Thanksgiving meal. And naturally, all the expats, we gravitate to each other's sites, hanging out with a lot of Brits and French and Spaniards and South Americans. And, and when you invite, they're a bit like the Brazilians. When you invite one person from France, then like 20 show up.
Yeah.
I invited this one girl, French winemakers. This other girl came, and then she texted me last minute and said, "My friend Mara is coming," and I said, "Yeah, sure. I think that's a girl's name. Would definitely want her to come." You know, and that was back in 2012. So we've been together since. And she's from Lecco, like right near Lake Como.
Oh wow, she's, as we would say, the fancy Italians.
But she's got somewhat, nobody in here appreciate her. She's kind of got that Torrone blood, which is southern. Her mother, she's quite dark.
Yeah.
Her dad's got the blue eyes, and it looks like he could be French or Swiss or something up near that border, but her mom's side of the family's definitely got the old school, like my mother's family.
Well, and that's and just as for everyone listening, they understand this. We actually have Italy is consistent like this. Like every region hates the other regions.
Yeah.
I have a buddy who lives in the Piedmont, and every time he had to leave, he was like, "Oh God damn, I gotta go to Italy." And I'm like, and then I knew a dude from Rome, and he was a student here at the wine school, and he was like, and he would just talk smack about anyone below the south. He's like, "Oh," and every time they would say, "Like, oh, I gotta go to Rome," and like, why is this? Why is calling something either like? If you're in the north, you call it, "Oh, I got to go to Rome," or if you're in Rome, you say, "I got to go to Italy." It's like it's always this, it's always an insult.
Pretty territorial and provincial.
Yeah, no, it's not surprising.
Nobody makes the pizza the right way in that part.
You get winemakers just complaining about each other. It is just like constant.
Drink all their wine. I love Italian wine so much.
Oh man, I know. It's one of the. I just love the fact that Italian wines in the U.S. are so popular because I get to run an advanced Italian program like every year and a half. And I just get to pull so much cool stuff.
There's so much there, too.
And I make it part of the project. It's for the advanced sommeliers. They have to find one obscure wine that I didn't talk about or pour in class. And I am just going out and like every weird thing, every beautiful unknown is in class, and it's the hardest thing for them to find a wine I didn't talk about or pour in class. It usually takes those students like 3 to 4 months to actually land.
If you're going to do
wine.
It with a country, Italy, because they got so many weird grapes and everything.
Oh yeah, and the genetic diversity is just insane. It's just fun watching it, just coming from like chemistry and science. It's just so much fun to look through this stuff. Yeah, but hey, that's Italy. New Zealand, however, which I hear is making some okay wines these days. Is that true?
We're doing pretty good, yeah. I mean, everybody obviously knows the Marlborough Sauv Blanc and the beast and monster that it is, and it paves the road for, a lot of else that goes on in the industry. But I think, I hope what's happening is that, with the likes of myself and a few other producers, I'm seeing more bits of Hawke's Bay and North Canterbury and Otago again.
Danny took the core program in the early parts of our lives, And in fact, actually, when now I'm the only one who teaches the foundation program, but I had someone else teaching at that time. So you're like one of the few students that I still know who actually I wasn't their professor. Like, it's a weird thing.
You were around, though.
Well, I was kicking around. Oh, yeah, I'm sure I was fine, which is amazing. So, yeah, I know. And this was back in the early when we were actually in our original school up in in Fairmount, and right next to the pizza joint.
That's right.
Very convenient. I got fat.
Yeah. But anyway, around that time was when the sort of second wave of New Zealand wines were coming into the U.S. And ultimately, it's what drew me to New Zealand because I just fell in love with particularly Martinborough Pinot Noir.
Right.
And they were, the Sauvignon Blancs and a bit of Chardonnay came first, and they were starting to be really successful. So then the next wave of wines that came were like some Otago Pinots, some Hawke's Bay Reds, Martinborough Pinots, I'm sure like Kumi River and some of the, and the wines are still hard to find, but you could find them, particularly in New Jersey. But I think there was pushback at that time because of pricing, where the Sauvignon Blancs were like, this is easy, we can get our head around it. It's obviously so distinct and it's maintained. Yeah. But particularly with the Pinot Noir, they were already, we're talking 20 years ago now, they were already in the $40 range, and people were going, what is this stuff? And it was very good, obviously it drew me there. It's beautiful wine. Yeah. But there was no, and this is what I mean in hindsight, there was no marketing push or education around that, say like there was for Vibrant Rioja, when there was all of a sudden Spanish wines everywhere.
That's true.
They were spending billions of euros to educate everybody from consumers, retailers, trade, people like you. They would just get the ball rolling for these people. And New Zealand just didn't have they had great wines and they have really good producers
Oh.
and great conscientious people, but they just didn't have the dollars behind it.
And I actually think we should step back just to point out this is actually, and I've talked about how the sausage got made for rosé, how that became so popular in America. That was a massive multi-year PR push by multiple wine industry trade groups spending millions of dollars. And they took me out on a yacht, fed me, entertained me. There was a bunch of D-list celebrities, apparently. I brought my wife.
Aren't you a D-list celebrity?
I know. Oh, no, I am an F-list celebrity at best. But no, and only two people who work in wine shops.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I gotta say, I actually recently got back to me that I was mean to somebody. I just didn't say hi to somebody in a wine shop.
How dare you?
I know, but it got back to me. It heard back that I hurt their feelings.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know that people know me. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like
So
my
sensitive.
yes, yeah, but also just I forget that I have to be nice to everybody in wine shops because they apparently all know me.
They probably went to your school.
Yeah. Oh no, that I would recognize. I would recognize that. No, these are just but so that said, so like this is a huge thing that almost every major wine that's been introduced into the United States, especially, there's been marketing money behind it. I mean, all the way going back to Argentinian Malbec in the early aughts.
Yep.
And like one of the things I'm not, when I actually represented Champagne for a year, I was their main ambassador, and I got paid a fortune for doing very little.
Yeah.
So this is many, many years ago, they realized that I just dropped too many F-bombs. Yeah. They just realized like they did not know what to do with me.
Even
so
for the French?
No, I was just a little too. Yeah.
Well, there's probably some Brits involved if it's champagne going
Yeah.
on.
Exactly. Oh, it was that was a clusterfuck. But that's a whole different story.
But it does point to, you're right,
Yeah.
though, it does point to the fact that these big PR pushes come, and they're usually from countries that have super government behind them.
Oh, yeah.
Willing to spend, whether it's, money from Argentina, and their government-backed initiatives.
Absolutely.
So hopefully New Zealand, there's talk of one happening soon.
That would be great.
Because we really need
Yeah.
to, I've been pounding the pavement for 15 years out here, with some years feeling like I'm by myself with alternative varieties from New Zealand.
Oh, that's
but
true.
It has increased, and I do see now. I have always saw like Bitter Craggy Range out there, and it was similar to me. They do Hawke's Bay and Martinborough fruit.
Yeah.
I've seen some other Hawke's Bay producers like Tomato State.
Yes.
And sometimes you find the weirdest wines in the weirdest states around the country.
Oh, I want to get to that, but before we start, just one thought. It's really impressive that New Zealand's the one place that hasn't really promoted themselves and yet had massive acceptance. Like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, which I actually use in many different ways in all my classes, just largely because one, you want to show terroir, like, which is a very, I don't use that lightly, but like the level of 4 mmp, and in which is one of those sulfur-based thiols that actually gives it that guava. Like you can't get that almost anywhere else. That is very much your South Island, so much sunshine, just the exact right place to get those flavors, and you can't get anywhere else.
I also think I've been there, like I said, 17 years now, and we talked about, everybody talked, they got young soils, and that was kind of preached to me, but the more I'm there, the more I do think it is a lot more to do with the sunshine and the high UV levels we have there.
Oh, it is. It's always
and
the UV.
we sort of have to ripen by UV, so we open the canopy. And I mean, all you have to do is get off the plane in New Zealand, and two things: you got to wear sunblock.
Yep.
And you notice that everything around you is more vivid. The greens are greener, the blues are bluer, and you go, "What the hell's going on here?" And it's because we're an island in the Pacific with no continental dust and really strong sunlight.
Yeah.
So it's that comes out in the wine. Of course, it does.
It's insane. Yeah. No, there's very few places you can point to that actually has that level, and usually most of them are very high elevated. New Zealand's one of the few that is reasonably not below 2,000 feet above sea level.
Most of our stuff's riverbeds.
And yet you're getting this UV. It is, and you're 100% right, at least from everything I now know. Being the, mind you, I do teach an advanced program on terroir.
You better
I
fucking
better
know
know this stuff. So there's that. And I just wanted to stress so everyone listening can get a little insider baseball on that. Now I'm going to actually issue my laments about New Zealand. Okay, so here's the problem. One, Temada, I love, right? Their Syrahs, when I can find them, amazing. When I can find their cabs, amazing. When I can find the one thing I can never find anymore, and I'm going to come to you in a second, is their Gamay. Like, what the fuck? Okay, one, I can never find your Malbec anymore. So now here's the thing, Danny. All right, you do this insanely great Malbec. Why? And you do. And what else are you making right now?
You're not looking in the right places.
I know.
Right, you can get my Malbec, but
I
also
know, but I don't buy
server in Jersey.
because I make sure that my friends, the shops that I tend to work with, they always have your Decibels.
Sauvignon Blanc.
Always, because we use it because it shows a very distinctly different type of Sauvignon Blanc than people are used to from New Zealand.
I'll bring you a bit of Pinot, a bit of Malbec, and since you know where you can find the Sauvignon Blanc, I'm going to bring you my Chenin Blanc, which is doing really well on this trip recently. And it's from this great certified organic vineyard that we work with called the Two Terraces Vineyard, which is one of the most famous vineyards now in New Zealand.
Oh, really?
There's about 15 winemakers all elbowing in for fruit from
Oh,
these
that's
guys.
fantastic.
And they grow Chenin, Albarino, which I make as well. But they have Gamay, they have Chardonnay,
Oh, okay.
Syrah there. It's a fantastic site. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's all about distribution and demand and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that you have a tough time finding.
I know, and it's hard because you're talking about alternative varieties from New Zealand and how hard it is. Like, no one's out there talking about it except for you're there, and Temata, which I mentioned.
Our distributor here in Pennsylvania, they're Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. We're in New York as well with somebody else, but they've got both Malbecs. They've got my Nouveau style Malbec.
Okay.
Got the Chenin. They've got a chilled red I do, which is Pinot based. I mean, I make 17 wines now.
Oh, you make 17 wines now?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, first off,
If you come into my tasting room, there's
you have
17 wines on the shelf.
So you have your, which is awesome. Now, where is your tasting room? So if people
So
wanna go.
I almost caved and bought a little winery and vineyard in the Giblet Gravels, and then thank God me and the guy are better friends for it. The deal fell through kind of in the 11th hour. And that was about 3 years ago, and right after that, maybe almost 4 years ago now, right after that, the space opened up in downtown Hastings, which is on the east block of Hastings, where there's all these great restaurants. Michael Henley, Master of Wine, has his own wine bar there.
Nice.
We're connected to a gin distillery,
Nice.
and it's a great place to be. And I realized, like, my role, much like it is with the vineyards, where I kind of get people to stop weed spraying and go organic, and I like to be with the people. You know what I mean?
For those who don't know, no, because most people here aren't from Philly, so let's just, McCrossin's is just a great local pub up in the Fairmount district.
Yeah, it's busy like 7 days a week. It's crazy, and we're actually in the process of working on a little tasting room upstairs there, which is going to be really cool.
Oh, nice.
So keep an eye out for that. That'll be later this year. We did a little sneak peek last week. Showed some people around. It's under construction.
We're going to have an actual anchor here in Philly, like a legit
little spot for us here, because we do have a lot of our wines here in Pennsylvania.
You do. It's just hard.
And they're all SLO except for that.
Yeah.
But
which is jargon, special liquor order. Sorry, folks.
But you just got to go over the bridge and you'll find it easy.
Exactly.
But so I have this downtown tasting room, and we do events. We have live music. Last night, I mean, I wasn't there. Obviously, I'm here.
Yeah.
They were doing a paint and sip night where there's a bunch of mothers from Mother's Day and painting and drinking wine. Whatever we can do to be with the people. You know what I mean?
With the people. That sounds like you're running for.
Get the wine to the people.
Yeah. All right. So you said 17 varieties?
Well, 17 different wines. So Decibel is a core range of wines we have. We do a couple pet nats in that, which are, by the way, are super clean and really well made. The Decibel Sauv Blanc, the Chenin Blanc, a Rosé.
Yeah.
The Malbec, and of course the Martinborough Pinot Noir, which drew me there. So, and that's our core range of wines. Obviously when I started, we have one of the old ones here. The old one.
So listening, I actually, because this is for, we're not going to open this largely because this is a 2013 Sauvignon Blanc. That's just for display, so that my first 4 students who became winemakers, I leave them up there.
That's so cool.
Oh, it is. It was funny how quickly it happened.
Dude, I still tell the story. People go, how did you end up here? And and people ask me, how did you get to New Zealand from Philly? And I say, well, I was, after being on the road with the band for a bit, I was managing a band. I came back to work at my family's restaurant, but I knew I couldn't stay there, and I started taking your classes.
Yeah.
And I was like, because I didn't realize, I knew I loved wine. I didn't know I actually had a good palate until we were doing blind tastings in your classes, getting like 10 out of 10, and people were giving me weird looks like, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just guessing, but I guess I'm guessing right.
Yeah.
And I pulled you aside and I said, you probably don't remember this, and I said, because you had done some vintages, been to some places. You'd been to France, you've been to California, and I was like, listen, man, how the hell do I do this?
Yeah.
I want to go do this somehow. And you said, chemistry, man. And I said, fuck.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Studied chemistry since high school. So
Yep.
I got a buddy who was studying, he's now a doctor here in Philadelphia. He gave me his MCAT book, and I started doing like basic chemistry again.
Oh, wow.
Those MCAT books are like this thick.
Yeah,
they're super thick. Well, I had to I joke around, people go, because I had a degree, I always read, I was like, I think, I'm not a dumb guy, I can figure this out, but it's the equivalent of you're like, I jog every day, and then somebody goes, great, well, you're in shape, here's a basketball. It's a different muscles going on in your brain. So I just wanted to get the language back going again and start looking at, inorganic, organic chemistry, and just start getting the basic language down again. So at least when I got there, which was still a ridiculous struggle, particularly for the first year, and then I caught my wind after that.
Yeah, that would be hard just because you jumped right in, and which is amazing that you do, and actually it was your career that gave me a little insight, like how to allow students to, give them a little bit more understanding and knowledge and acclimation of what is going to be expected, so before they jump in, which is why one of the reasons why I started the advanced winemaking program.
But you were open to the idea that I was like, I want to get out of the bar. I said I want to get it behind.
I know. What I told you is you just go.
Yeah.
Go, because there's no other way. There's no at that point in time. There's just you jump in or you sink or swim, and the thing is you swam, but which was amazing. I gave the same advice to other people and they sunk. So I'm like, all right. I have to so as for the school, I say I have to actually give students better advice because sure, Danny did this awesome, amazing thing, but then I had other students who, didn't.
But I think honestly, one of the best things is growing up in a restaurant. I worked for this guy Glenn Hugo out in Girard one year in 2012, which now they're in receivership.
Yeah,
or something,
I know.
But I haven't talked to him in a while. But I hope he's doing okay. But he said every year all his first year interns are ex-restaurant people, that when he goes around and sells the wine, he just said, hey, you want to come do harvest, and I said, yeah, that's probably a good idea. They're used to working on their feet. They're used to working long hours. They're used to cleaning, which is 90% of the job.
Yeah, exactly.
They're used to being in the weeds, which you constantly are in the winery. So you're used to just get it done, figure it out somehow,
And be able to quick thinking and under pressure. Because the thing is
tanks
absolutely.
explode.
They do. Oh, yeah. Things that, people fall. Yeah, I mean,
so
things happen.
And I've seen this, I won't say the name. I've seen accountants come out and try to do harvest, I'm like, you can't bean count here. We just got to get it done,
Yeah.
And so it takes a certain kind of personality. Winemakers are usually pretty interesting people. A lot of my friends, and they're, they have a diverse range of skills.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You hold your own.
And that's the hard bit. And one of the things when my students in corporate say, I want to do this, I'm like, well, this is hard. That corporate lifestyle is the very opposite of what you need. Because there's no one to call, and they don't understand how deep that goes.
And there's no money.
Yeah, exactly. No, and there's no one to call, and you're responsible for everything. And most people don't understand how that feels, and that's a huge weight that most people just they can't understand. That's but. It is, it is restaurant people. I mean, there's always, having some restaurant industries.
At least to be workers.
Workers,
we're cellar hands and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All the way up, unless you're unless you're the money guy. At that point, it doesn't matter because you're going to hire people to do it, and you're going to lose money on this no matter what. But so here we are. I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Because you've been in New Zealand now for
17 years.
17 years.
Plus.
Plus.
18 vintages.
So Pinot Noir, always beloved. I've from the very beginning, the Pinot beyond all else, because it was always varietally correct. And so say up until around 2015, 2016, maybe 2018, you saw a very diverse range of Pinot Noir. You saw ones that really heavily, very lean, a lot of barnyard, some roses, and they were always when I wanted to show varietal fingerprints, I brought in New Zealand because I always knew consistently. But style has changed. I've noticed a rather rapid change in New Zealand Pinots where they're becoming richer, heavier, much more fruit forward. I'm not going to insult you by saying Willamette Valley style, but have you noticed a shift, movement?
I don't know. I don't know which wines you're drinking, so it's tough for me to say. But I would say, we're pretty conscious of that. We don't want to be California, Oregon Pinot. These past 2 weeks, and I kept saying, oh, these are almost like, at least stylistically and body-wise, a little bit like old Burgundy, because God knows recent Burgundy vintages are so concentrated and tannic.
Yeah.
And they are still pretty light on their feet.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if you're talking about Central Otago.
Yes, I'm talking about Central Otago.
Then Central Otago, I mean, that is, there's a couple things going on there, and this is why wine's interesting. One is the weather, and that they get that diurnal shift where they get really hot. They get the hottest days during the summer, but then the coldest nights.
Oh, okay.
So they get like these big fruit bombs. It's just going to happen from Otago.
Yeah, I've noticed that it has been increasingly leading into that in the last decade.
Much like you would say Marlborough with their Sauvignon Blanc, they say, well, this works and people like it, and then we're going to go even further. You get all that tourism in Queenstown. You get people flying in from Asia and around the world, and they go, hey, we got these amazing expressive Pinots. I think personally there's something to that.
Yeah.
Where we say Martinborough, our main market is some of the old traditional markets like Australia and the UK, but Wellington, Wellington.
Yes.
That was part of that second wave of wines that came in.
Yes.
It's very hard to find a Martinborough Pinot in America now.
I know. This is a problem.
And, well, it's a problem for Americans, but they sell them elsewhere.
I know. That's clearly.
And I think, it was like pushback to price and everything, and we don't get the volumes that a lot of the Otago and the yields that a lot of the Otago producers get. You could look at the same exact clone on very similar soils in Martinborough versus Otago, and the bunches will look way bigger in Otago than they will in Martinborough, because we get those real windy spring days in Martinborough. So we get thicker skins and smaller concentrated bunches. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Which makes.
But we get like more savory character there. Now, as I'm seeing vine age in Otago, and there's great producers like Felton Road and Volley. And, and they're two of my favorites. Where those wines are getting crazy good, like they're just amazing and great winemakers and everything. So I think vine age too helps, with like complexity, and usually the younger the vine, the more fruit forward it's going to be in the beginning. So I mean, it's just all so new down there at the end of the day,
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I do love that. It's something I always preach to students is that they're very look who the market is, and you could because you'll see where the style is, why the style is there. And that makes sense that you have in Otago, there's more of a there's outside influences that are really contributing to the bigger, richer. That makes a lot of sense.
And to be honest, there can be pushback with that too. And you can pay $80 for a Pinot and go what the hell did I just drink? I didn't, it was light and fruity and it was pretty good, and maybe there's a bit of oak there. And there's some people, as we say, taking the piss, but they can, because they get tourist dollars that come through, and they get these junkets. So good on them. I mean, we don't have a lot. Hawke's Bay, we're pretty secluded. Martinborough, you got Wellington there, but only the knowledgeable tourist is going to go over to Martinborough.
All right.
And then Marlborough makes some good Pinot producers there, but some of the bigger guys who make Pinot, it's like, oh yeah, here's our Pinot too, because we make 1 million liters of Sauvignon Blanc, and those wines are their own thing. They can be kind of, to me, they're always a bit sort of edgy and smoky, and they can be really good. They're interesting. And then there's North Canterbury as well, which makes some pretty serious Pinots. That's basically near Christchurch.
The business of wine, and the reason why you're here, of course, you are a Philly native. That's why, but you've really had a focus on the East Coast with your wines. You make sure they're here. But one of the things is, but why do you have to? People don't understand how the wine industry works. So why is it that you're here? You're here almost every year.
Yeah, sometimes, a lot of times twice a year.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, the U.S. is a very big place.
Yes.
And so it's honestly 50 markets.
Yep.
Most states in the U.S. have way more people than there is in all of New Zealand. And New Zealand's a good, wine market for us.
Yeah.
But we sell more wine in Kansas than we do in New Zealand, probably.
Wow. Okay.
In certain months, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, but the reason why you're here is, man, we move. When I come, the sales go up. It's just very simple, and that's because I go out with It's very easy to get appointments for the sales team when they say there's a winemaker in town. So we can go around. We do events. I did a country club event in Akron, Ohio last night, and we sold 135 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
My distributor loves that. And then, the other thing, and I say this when I go, you're sitting in a car with a salesperson for the day, basically. Yeah. Part of it is them hearing you say the same thing to 5 or 6 accounts during the day and understand the story behind the wine and that there's a person behind the wine. That's a big deal for a lot of retailers.
Oh,
especially where I'm in. I'm not a giant producer or anything. They want to go, hey, I met that guy. There's a real person who makes that wine.
Right.
It's not some, Constellation brand or Pinot Ricard or something. There's a big corporation behind it. So that really helps drive the sale. And then it continues on after that because they go, yeah, I like Decibel, I like Dan, I like those wines, and hey, then they can go out for the next few weeks, and then until maybe some markets I might only get to once every 2 or 3 years. But Philly, Jersey, New York, I try to get to, at least one of those on every trip because we know, I can come see some family, I can stay for free, I can borrow some cars, I can get some free meals, so that's a big advantage I have over a lot of New Zealand producers.
That is. And so are you distributed in all 50 states?
No, but we're a lot more, probably like 25 now.
Wow.
Or something. So California, Oregon, Washington, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona. Just left Illinois, but going back in soon because somebody went bankrupt, but we're going back in.
Good.
Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. Yeah, we were in Louisiana. I don't think we are now. But some good states in there. Michigan's a great wine.
And I'm glad you have Texas. Texas usually is pretty big.
The wine industry is like, so we have one agent. It's a bit like Pennsylvania in a way because we have like the PLCB, some of the specialty stores have our Sauvignon Blanc.
Yes.
Well, you're not really selling a lot of wine in Texas unless you're with the specs and the supermarkets there.
Yes.
They actually have amazing wine collections. It's not like, this is just supermarket wine. They're the big retailers there. So we have one outfit that just sells to them. And then we actually have a guy who I met up with on my trip in Houston 2 weeks ago who does all our other wines, and he does all small retailers and restaurants. And so he's focusing on the Chenin Blanc and the Malbec and the Pinot and stuff like that. And there's scenarios like that all over, and we again get the wine to the people.
It's hard. And it's the part of the job that people don't realize that if you are the winemaker, you're the owner,
they want to talk to me. They want to talk to me,
and that's everybody across the United States. And you have 50 different markets with every that has their own laws, so it's not like you can just make one deal across the country.
No, it's 50 markets.
It's 50 countries.
Occasionally we have distributors in 2 states and you can bounce around a little bit. But again, America's very big. You say I'm in Charlotte and I'm in, Myrtle Beach, 2 different states. That's a long drive.
No. Yeah.
And there's, to fly is not worth it.
That you just eat up everything.
Yeah.
And it's the beautiful part. It also allows a very small operation to succeed too. And which is one of the funny parts about America, like since we, it's the one piece of our, interstate commerce, except for alcohol, except for wine, like this one caveat that's cut out from Prohibition. But it does allow us, because to be honest, I don't think either you or I would exist if it was one large market. Like we would have to be competing against.
It would be too
the
corporate.
gallows, and it would just be and we would just be a little, and we'd we'd be sitting there. But you're successful because you're good and you're willing to work hard and you're willing to actually really do what you need to do. And how much of your time, like you think every year, is done building markets, servicing markets rather than just winemaking? Just how much? 20%, 30%?
Probably, definitely over 30.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Thankfully I work with growers, and I had worked on a lot of vineyards the first sort of half dozen years there, and I've done my time pruning and things like that. So I'm not going back to pruning or anything. It was very good. Like I always kind of had a vision in my head that I never thought I'd go to New Zealand and become a winemaker. That sounded like I'll be an astronaut,
Right.
But I thought I'll go there and learn about it, and then when I talk to winemakers, they won't be able to pull the wool over my eyes,
Right.
So, but it, to an extent, the vineyard side of the business is that way, in that they know I know what I'm talking about. They know I've worked in vineyards. They know that I've done it and I can relate. And I also am empathetic with their problems and what it costs to do and how hard it is. I'm trying to get people to transition to organic growing, and that's usually a 3-year hit. At least the first 2 years where your crop goes down a little bit and then it comes back much more resilient, thicker skins, more resilient to inclement weather, which is, with climate change is one of our bigger issues in New Zealand. So, but, going back to what you said about I mentioned all that stuff about the work you put in to get your wine out in the market. It still goes back to the idea that wine is such a unique product, such a unique thing, and that it's a vintage, and then we can look back. Is there anything else? I'm sure you must talk about this in your classes. Is there anything else that is in the world that we can look back and go, what was it like 20 years ago? What was it like 10 years ago? Maybe a literature or a song or something, but nothing like a physical thing that you can taste and feel and everything. So the idea that this product can travel from New Zealand to the other side of the world, and somebody in Chicago can pour a glass of my wine, and maybe they were lucky enough to come to New Zealand and they can smell that wine and go, fuck, I love New Zealand. I remember when I was there in 2010 and this and there's really nothing else like that. I don't know,
There is nothing. And, and outside of the technology of us talking on a podcast, there are these same conversations happening for 4,000 years. And that's the weird, in the same effect, the Canaanites were shipping their awesome wines from Asia and the Middle East, taking it to what now is Italy, and people having the conversation about how awesome it is. We have all this, we do know this.
The alcohol preserves it.
And it's always been this thing that's absolutely beloved. And there's the argument is that, in fact, actually, it existed before we were modern humans. I mean, even monkeys love booze. They do. They can seek it out. They find it. Of course, it's all carbonic because it's all fermented inside. It is because the berries. That's how they ferment. Yeah. Even before, and even up to the moment where, again, I do teach advanced. I tell you, along with the terroir program, I teach an ancient wine program, which is I taught it just largely because I wanted to know more. It's amazing. No, it is. But the thing you're talking about here, is just that making something here, and it's just this thing that. Yeah, that story of it is a very, very old story. And people worry that, Gen Z isn't drinking as much. It's wait till they hear the story. Yeah. Actual story, not the bullshit that they hear, but the actual authentic story that we are involved in.
I think that, everybody's in a little bit of a panic in the industry right now. And I think it's because the industry got a little fat and a little bit oversupplied and a little bit like we're going to take advantage and we're just going to mass produce certain things. Yep. The generation, whatever, 1 or 2 behind me, I think they just want to hear those stories and they want to meet the person. And when that happens, we sell plenty of wine. But going back to what you said about that kind of old thinking, just reminded me, I was, believe it or not, with 2 brain surgeons the other night after this tasting, and we were sitting around, and he's just fascinated by wine. And so is the woman. It was a colleague of his. She joined us a little later, but he said something really cool, that wine is something that really separates us from the rest of the animals and and I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, listen, there's 3 things that give us humanity. And I said, what's that? And he goes, we make wine, we bake bread, and we drill holes in people's skulls. He goes, there's no other animals. And he said, and you can go back for thousands of years, and people were drilling holes in people's heads.
They were, and pretty effectively, too.
And in South America, they were doing it. The Incas and Mayas drilling holes,
That's hilarious. Because I thought you were going to say language, not anymore.
No, there's plenty of language going on.
Oh, my God, that is hilarious. I love that. I love that definition of humanity. That's a very new one. We're not going to be seeing any whales, or orcas drilling holes in heads.
No.
Although I think the orcas would do it.
They could. They're pretty smart.
They're smart. Yeah, and they're mean, too.
We get them around the Hawke's Bay, actually.
Oh, my God.
Pods of orcas come through. My wife and daughter saw them, 6 months ago come through.
Yeah. Do you, just get some, some... That'd be fun to have, a orca watching trip and just, throw baby seals into the water to watch them get eaten?
They do that. South Island, they have whale... I've never been on one, but they do those boats that go out and you can see whales. Yes. I've seen a whale out at Cape Rangi top. You can see whales more and more these days, but orcas I think are a little less predictable. But unless you got some seals in the water,
I know, right? Exactly.
And there's plenty of seals on the South Island of New Zealand. Particularly, I mentioned Christchurch earlier. The coast down there. above Christchurch, there's all these seals, and there'll be some orcas not
Oh,
too
yeah.
far away.
Oh, yeah.
They
Well,
get hungry.
Oh, yeah. Like the National Wine School's main studios are in Midcoast, Maine. And they're there because part of my contract was because the school's headquarters are in Vermont. I'm like, no, I much prefer the water. So they actually built our studio in a house on the property, which is awesome. But when you go to the nearby beach, you do have to, because when there's seals around, the great whites are out. So you have to
tread lightly.
Yeah, go in with a friend, someone smaller, someone more tasty, I always bring my wife out with me, which is probably, she thinks it's a couple thing. I'm like, no, they're going to eat you first, honey.
That's cold.
It is. It's self-preservation. I know. Or when I have my dog out with me, out swimming, and I'm like, don't get eaten. However, dark. So, seals watching, I think it would be a great business opportunity for anyone in New Zealand to actually have orca watching. But this is true, who we are. The being. It's funny how to make a transition from drilling holes in heads and orcas eating baby seals.
Yeah.
But I am curious though. Finishing, you did mention global warming and heat indexes. I assume our heat index is rising because we're having issues some places in the United States, like Willamette Valley. Its heat index has actually keeps going up and up.
Yeah.
Parts of California are not. Some are, like Napa is, but then like Washington State, Columbia Valley is not. Like we're seeing resilience in some places and real impacts in others, and really don't know why yet. So what's going on? Like, are you seeing this happening?
I think, first of all, Hawke's Bay, going back for I don't know how many, 30, 40 years, could ripen Cabernet 10 out of 10 years. We don't have an issue with that. Great long, dry growing season. But with the caveat is that now we are seeing a little bit more weather incidents. So if we get easterlies or if the ocean temperature's warm, we got a huge cyclone in 2023. Now that was supposed to be a 1 in 100-year storm, and it's turned out to be a 1 in 50-year storm now. It's not happening overnight, but that knocked out a lot of vineyards and caused a lot of issues. Some were fine because they were later ripening and everything. We always do seem to get a little bit of rain in March that forces our hand with picking some of the whites and things.
Oh, that would be. And so people understand, we're inverse of here. Antipodes welcome. Yeah. So this is actually harvest.
North is warmer.
Yeah.
And cyclones go in the opposite direction of hurricanes, but they're the same thing.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, look at that. You're learning some trivia.
Oh, wow. That's not trivia. That's important. I'm like, how do I not know this? This is bad. Okay.
And so, yeah, we see some more weather incidents. But to me, that is all the more reason and why a lot more people are going to organic wine growing, because having a floor of grass under the vines mops up a lot of water.
Yes, it does. And
if we need to make premium wines, like it's getting to the stage, not quite there, but it is going there, where if you're a mid-size, certainly or smaller producer, and you say I'm a premium, if you're not organic, people are starting to go, why not? Because it just means you're not spending the money. Craggy Range is in a big conversion right now. They're going to, the one when they flipped a few years back, I was working for them. All of a sudden, another winery up the road went, Alpha Domus, and they start going, oh shit, we better do this too.
Oh, Alpha Domus went organic? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So all of a sudden they start going, we better too. We kind of always wanted to. We know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's for a few reasons. Is you talk to old George Fistanich from Villa Maria, and he would always say our most resilient vineyards are the certified organic ones. It's you definitely get spongier or more elasticity in the skins.
Yes.
The rachis, which is like the little bit of stem that attaches to the berry.
Yes.
That gets a little bit more elongated, and so the berries are more open, and you get more airflow.
Yeah.
That's through like foliar sprays and nutrients through there, instead of just the old whack it with weed spray. And nowadays, New Zealand, some of my friends will knock sustainable wine growing in New Zealand because they say it's not quite enough. And they're right, but I think what New Zealand Wine Growers has done a good job by instilling that, whatever it was 20 years ago, is it gave everybody a really good sort of first step in that direction. And they really kept a keen eye on a lot of the sprays out there. They basically had withholding limits on a lot of the pesticides and herbicides so that you just couldn't use them anyway. They didn't make sense to use them because if you say like an herbicide or a pesticide because your fruit's getting a little ripe and there's some fungus going on. Well, if you can't pick the wine for another 45 days, that's going to throw you out the window anyway. You wouldn't want to spray it in January. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, I guess we got to find other solutions. So then we find these soaps and bio things and different, and so that's how technology catches up by demand, And so these companies go, okay, well, you can't use that anymore, so we're going to come in with these bio sprays and things like that, and which are way better for the environment and way better for people. The other thing is, like, if you're trying to make premium wine, there is, you will crop lower if you're organic, but you will crop better and you'll get more concentration, you'll get better fruit,
And, that's the name of the game. It's no longer volume. It can't be.
I think the market right now is teaching us that,
Oh, yeah. And this was coming for a long time because it was pretty obvious because beer got hit first. And, I would watch, and I've been watching, because one of the things I always do is the smartest people in the wine industry, the people who actually, or in the beer and in the liquor business, they know what sells. It's the wine shop, like the little shop owners, even the little bodegas. Like, you walk into a bodega, they know what sells. And so they're going to give more shelf space to it. So I would roll into like the local bodegas and see how much, they always had great beer selection, tiny wine selection. But then all of a sudden you start seeing the wine staying static, but the beer slowly disappearing. And what's there instead? Those RTDs, exactly. You're ready to drinks. And that, as I saw that going over the years, I'm like, oh, beer is dead. And that was scary to watch it. And because, in fact, I run the Philly Beer School too. And we saw that. I'm like, okay, we're going to have to supplant a lot of our beer producing classes because there's not going to be anyone down the pike in 5 years. Like, nobody's going to be making beer. It's like, it's going to be dead for. And there's something weird about beer. It's very cyclical. But so you saw that, and you saw, like, all right, the lower end, like, people have choices. And if you're making a generic product, basically, largely, whatever's the best generic product is going to win. And it just happens to be right now is those, the modern day Zimas. Because I grew up with Zimas. Oh my God.
You've been around long enough, like me, where you've seen these things. I mean, think about what beers were around, even when McCrossen's reopened in the 90s. It was rare for us to have Sierra Nevada and Heineken. People would come to us just because
of that. I remember when Sam Adams became, like, first was released, and it was a revelation. Like, this is beer.
Yeah.
Like, mean, I grew up. I mean, it was like, if you ordered import, it was at best Heineken. But everything was Budweiser. Like, it was nothing but.
We came a long way. I mean, to think about it that way is like
insanely great. But it does happen to go through these boom bust cycles because of because you are hitting a younger clientele. And they are, because it's a lower price point, and so therefore you are getting, and that's very movable. This is the first time in our lifetimes that we saw wine being supplanted by something now, and that's scaring everyone. But I have to do a lot of research on these things. The American wine population drinking for fine wine isn't changing. Definitely not with millennials. Like, they just have to make a little bit of money. Great research has been shown that they're spending the same amount of money by percentage of their income on fine wine. It's just that they're right now not making as much as Gen X or the boomers before them at this time of their life. But they're scaling up. They're going to be there. They're fine. The boomers are dying. They're going to get all that money. They're they're going to be fine. Gen Z, I've had a lot of conversations in the wine industry and winemakers, and they're not worried. Like, fine wine producers are like, no, they're going to be here. Like, they are. It's just...
I agree.
Right now, like, they're at most 27, and honestly, in our classes here, one of the reasons why we run public classes is to see who's showing up for, like, a food and wine class. Like, last night, one of my instructors did a wine and cheese pairing class. Now, that usually trends older, but it wasn't. Everyone was in their 20s.
Oh, that's cool.
Mid to late 20s. And that's just, it's great market research. It's like, the people who are really interested in wine right now are not who you expect.
And I think, I'm pretty sure it was you that said to me years ago that this school is an affordable luxury. I believe you said that.
I'm wise beyond my years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Your class is, especially a one-off like that, so affordable and fun to do, and like a great thing to do on a given night.
Oh, yeah.
And people want to learn that. So it should kind of skew towards younger people. It's like a fun night out,
Oh, and I know. I love scaring people in the beginning because I always know that they'll love me by the end. And I have that. No, I just, I have resting wasp face. I call it. Like, I just like people look at me like, oh, that man is mean and he probably hates me. And then I just like start talking. He's like, oh, he's just weird.
Yeah. I just thought of something. We did a dinner over somewhere in Fairmont with some pairing dinner with you.
Yes,
and,
it was. I think it was a SmackDown.
Yeah, it was a SmackDown. That's
Smalley
right.
SmackDown.
And I think I had 2 wines at the time or something, maybe
Yeah.
3. You ran across the street in the middle of the dinner and went into your school, and he came back and he goes, listen, everybody, listen up. I just pulled Dan's exam from his last test he took in my school. He got every blind wine right, 9 out of 10. You know the one he got wrong? Marlboro 7.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, that's evil. Oh, that's so evil.
I was like, thanks, Keith.
Yep.
Thanks, buddy.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. That's it. That's it. That's the only one. And here he is trying to like, nope. That's it. That's awesome. That is awesome. That that tracks. All too well. Yeah, that was awesome. I do. Fairmont was such a great neighborhood. So this is fantastic. One thing I just want to double back just so people understand one thing about organic, because organic is this big messy thing in the U.S. There's a very big difference in wine that is made, fermented organically, and then it's grown organically.
Exactly.
When you're talking about growing organically, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so they are 2 different things. And to me, the winemaking side is a lot simpler. We just, there's certain products we don't use. I wouldn't use them anyway. Most of this stuff, the sulfur levels that, you're under a bit of restriction from. But the weird thing is in the U.S., you're still not allowed to use potassium metabisulfite and call it organic. But you're allowed to use sulfur gas, which is so dangerous.
Yes, it is. Oh, it's insane. It is absolutely insane. So that's why I want to stress this, because the U.S. laws are so weird when it comes to SO2 use.
So,
but
anyway, going back to
growing,
the vineyard. Back to the vineyard. What that means is you can't use weed sprays, you can't use any herbicides or pesticides.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean we don't do other things to mitigate weed growth. We do undervine mowing. We have, people do, they're typically not much spraying, but we do other things to, they do cultivation, or they do other things to, because you can't have too much competition around the base of the vine.
Right.
But some competition is good.
Yeah.
Vines are funny. They like to be just on the edge of being happy and stressed. They're like raising a kid, you know what I mean?
Thank you. That's how I always say. People always get offended when I say that. You want to like, they need
can't
to
give
get
a kid
hungry.
everything he wants, or they go spoiled,
Yeah, no. They'll just be,
So there's that, and there's basically, I think that's the simplest way to put it. Is organic growing is no pesticides, no herbicides. The big one, the big hurdle for a lot of people around the world is the weed sprays under the vine. That's why I keep going back to the base, because that is also kind of the most important thing as well, because there is a kingdom below our feet of microbes and amazing things that can contribute to these amazing symbiotic relationships under your feet in the soil that can give vines strength. But it's not developed overnight. It takes years and years for your soil health and soil development. There's undervine plantings. We do trying to fix nitrogen with clover in between the vines. And all these kind of things we do to help with. It could be, this flower brings these type of bugs in that fight these other kind of bugs.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Because this is key to everywhere, and everything's underground. Like everything that matters is underground. Like the systems that are playing. When people want to talk about terroir, it's like, well, it's also, it is your vine health requires healthy soils that are vibrant and alive, which is something we didn't used to do. It used to be basically kill change. It and incorporate
man over nature.
So, But now we realize we do absolutely need to have those. And what are you like? Here in California, well, not right now in California, but like the glassy wing sharpshooters are such a problem because of the bacterium that they spread. Well, how do you deal with that? Instead of, you can't kill them, so what you do is you create environments for them away from the vineyards, surrounding the vineyards.
Exactly.
For them to actually get the plants, the sweet grasses that they want to thrive in, let them thrive there. Even to animals, like how are you going to deal with unwanted vermin? Well, raptor nests are fun and wonderful. I used to, when in Cali, I at least love building those things, You can, there's all kinds of ways, no matter what systems you're trying, there's always a way to actually think about how to build it. Like, even in our offices in Maine, I built around our facility a dead hedge, largely because we needed a way so that animals aren't coming really close to our studios because they were making a lot of noise. Even with the soundproofer, you could still hear the animals outside and our dogs freaking out because there's animals. So you build out a dead hedge and allow you to actually feed that give the mice things to eat so that they can actually naturally stop the tick population. If you think about how to build out the systems and help it, you can create incredibly great environments. It just takes a lot of thinking and a lot of
thinking, a lot of work. Sometimes it's really hard. You mentioned the Giblet Gravels earlier, where a lot of my Malbec comes from. It was a river until 1863, and there was an earthquake. The river took a shorter path to the ocean, left all these rocky soils behind. A few viticulturists in Hawke's Bay fought the council because they wanted to quarry the whole thing because Old River Stone makes great concrete. Fast forward now, it's like the most expensive land in the country, and there's every winery around New Zealand wants to have a plot of Giblet Gravels.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's really interesting terroir and everything. But when I first arrived in New Zealand, they were having major virus issues there with leaf roll 3 virus. Yeah. There's plant and food research in New Zealand and a couple other outfits. Some of the wineries all got together. And what they were realizing is there was this, what is it called again? These little mites basically coming out of the ground because there was nothing for them to feed on in the soil because it's all rocky soil.
Yeah.
So they try to come up and it was a particular problem in the gravels. It was a little bit of an issue in some other areas. They had to rogue vines and replant and everything. But what they realized is they need to give them reason to stay down in the ground. Because they were the actual vector of the virus. So they were going up in.
Yep.
And then so not only that, if you have one vine in the middle of a row that you know has the virus, you have to rogue the one across from it, the other side, and the two next to it as well.
God, that's right.
So it's a big project, and it was a really interesting one where they had GPS tracking on everything. And they've pretty much got it under control now, but they really had to watch these little mites that would get up into the. And so it was all kind of you'd go up to a vine and you peel back a little of the bark and you go, "There's one right there. That one's got a virus,"
God.
And so that was like a perfect kind of project without I don't know this for a fact or where it happened, but I know that there would have been some pretty systematic sprays going on.
Yes.
Oh, let's just nuke them,
Yeah, exactly.
And what happens a year later,
it's worse, Now they're resistant, and now they're like 3 times the size, and they're angry.
So then that's where you get into row plantings and things like that they're trying to mitigate in other ways. But so there's always issues every year. Things change. Birds are a big thing for us in New Zealand. We have so many birds, and they'll just decimate an entire vineyard. So we net everything, and then the latest technology in the last probably only 5 years, well, maybe 7 years, is frickin' lasers.
Really?
Yeah. So we have these they don't hurt anybody or anything, and they sit at a light spectrum that we can't really see unless it actually hits the ground. Then you see where it's pointed to.
Yeah.
But the birds hate them.
Oh, this is fantastic.
And they go random patterns and everything, and now everybody's putting them up in the vineyards.
Oh, my God. Laser light shows for birds. I mean, come on. This is awesome.
I lived on a vineyard when they first came out, and I lived on one of the first vineyards that had it. And I was in my kitchen. I saw a light shine into my kitchen window. What the fuck was that?
You're like,
scared me.
Is this Black Hawk Down? What's going on here?
So the next day, I went out and I was watching it. The birds, I swear, they were all like huddled behind the headland going, "What the hell is that? Let's get the hell out of here." So smart and instinctive that, if it was a normal pattern, they would pick it up and know it.
Oh, really?
So that it goes on all random patterns, and you have to keep moving it with the ripening of the fruit.
Oh, God. Well, on that note, this was awesome, man. This was so great to see you again. It's been so long.
I'm sure we went way longer than we thought we would. Check us out at decibelwines.com. I'm at Decibel Wines on Instagram and at Decibel Dan if you want to see some more random content. I'm now at Decibel Dan Zealand on Instagram, and that's more personal stuff. But drop me a line if you're coming to New Zealand. We love visitors. I know some people it's like a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and I know how long of a trip it is, so I really like to take care of people when they come that far and figure out what you like to do, whether it's just drink wine the whole time or you want to go hiking or jump off a cliff or go golfing or surfing. We have amazing surfing there. Where all the good restaurants are in any given city and place there. So, feel free to reach out and let's talk.
Well, that's perfect, man. Well, on that note, I'm going to definitely have to come and hang out with you.
You got to take a few weeks off and You don't even have to go to Australia. Just hang in New Zealand.
Thank you so much, man. It was great having you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
great to have
Thanks for listening to After Wine School. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor. Share it with a friend, leave a review, or post about it. That stuff really helps us keep the corks popping and the mics rolling. Catch you next time, and don't forget to feed the orcas.